Welcome to UncommonCents, the live in-person edition. Craig Kamanis and Dean Holmes here, ready to do a UncommonCents marathon. We've booked a podcast studio, paid real money to go live with a slight delay to our audience. Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Dean. Two things. One, you should have told me not to wear a green shirt because I'm actually back a wall. And two, now everyone can actually see the height difference because you can't level us up. So short of standing on a box, this is how your co-hosts for UncommonCents really line up with each other.
So in the break, we'll be finding a milk crate for Craig with our height adjustment. But welcome, Craig. We will duck straight into our episode so we keep ourselves accountable. As you can see, we've got the professional microphones, earphones, and the equipment there that you can see live as well. So we've made a good effort to record today. So ladies and gentlemen, the episode today that we want to talk about is in the theme of learning from other professionals and continuing the journey that we did do a few episodes ago last year. And we wanted to revisit the doctors. Craig's had different experiences with the doctor. And so we're going to talk about that in terms of the client experience and how we all need to sort of reflect on our experience and use some other examples to make sure that we're doing it. So Craig, give us the intro.
I will, and it's actually quite funny in talking about a doctor and client experience in the same sentence almost, because the traditional part of this, mate, is doctor-patient, right? But yesterday, my wife and I actually attended a specialist appointment and I left there beaming. And Julie was like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you so happy?" There was no bad news or anything, by the way, everyone. It's for a good preventative measure we're going, but no bad news. She goes, "Why are you beaming?" And I said, "Because I just had the best experience and this is going straight to UncommonCents." And she's like, "Do you think about anything else?" "No, I don't. I just think about real world experiences and UncommonCents." And this story, Dean, ties, mate, to the whole experience of the arrival, the waiting, the going to see the doctor, and just how it made us feel. So this doctor's surgery, just give people the short version, it was in an old sort of style home. When you walked in, it was very evident that it had been decorated by someone to suit women to make them feel comfortable in the environment they were walking into. So that was really nice. The experience then went beyond. So everyone knows you go to the doctor, you say, "I'm here." They say, "Have a seat." And then the doctor comes out and grumbly calls your name and then stomps off down the hallway and you've got to try and catch up if you can and get into the room with the doctor. This experience was much better in terms of, welcome to our surgery. We'd like to let you know that down the end of the hallway are our bathrooms, etc. Should you need those, there's some water over there. The doctor won't be long. Please have a seat in those comfy chairs over there and we'll be with you soon. So that's pretty standard, I guess, other than some direction around where facilities are and stuff. But again, I can't take you in there, but the environment felt good. Then what happened next, I've never, ever seen happen. It was our turn to see the doctor. The receptionist came around the desk. She said, "Craig and Judy, would you like to come with me? It's time to see the doctor." She walked us to the door of the doctor's room. She knocked on the door, she opened it, and she said, hello, Dr. Dean. I'd like to introduce you to Julie and Craig." And I was just like, wow, the experience. And he was, "Oh, hello, Julie and Craig, please come in and sit down." And then even the way he had his room set up, I know normally you sort of sit side onto a doctor, but just the way he had it set up with a big screen to look at stuff on the screen and the way we sat sort of side onto him, but then, the way he could turn around and was more frontal, like it was conducive of a conversation.
A bit like how we can do it.
Yes, exactly right.
You can look at the camera or you can have a conversation.
Yeah. So all of a sudden we're in a position like this where it's very conducive to a warm conversation, but he can explain things on the screen and it's big so you can see it. And just, the proactiveness he went through in that room to take us through and provide comfort. So that's what you think about, right? What am I looking for when I go to a doctor? I'm looking for comfort. What am I looking for when I go to a financial planner? I'm probably looking for comfort. I'm looking for safety and those type of things. Yep. But just the way he managed that meeting, and I think it was because of the way his room was set up, it felt better. And then when we finished the appointment, and it was a standard timed appointment, and he was the standard doctor. I don't really want to listen to you. I'm just going to tell you what we're doing. We're going to go. And he'd done his homework as well, but that was great. And then, the exit process, even where you had to pay, of course, was just as nice. Like everyone made you feel comfortable. We learned that the lady working in the practice was actually a previous patient. So that speaks 1,000 words to me that if someone who actually saw this doctor now wants to work for them in their practice. And away we went, full of peace of mind. with a clear process, with a clear plan, and away we went. But that long story, Dean, took me to what is the experience when a client rolls in to our financial planning firm's offices. If you have an office, if you don't have an office, what is the experience they have before they see you? And does it always have to be the same? When was the last time you walked out and walked into your office as a client with that mindset on and learned and felt the experience you're delivering?
Absolutely. And it is hard for us to do that, Craig. It's hard for us to walk into our office that we might walk into every day and try to think about and experience it from a client perspective. But that's what we're trying to talk about today, is that the first thing that we want to do is almost leave our office, come in with a fresh set of eyes, perhaps with a friend or someone that can help you see things that you ignore because you go in there every day, that the magazines are out of date, or it can be that the furniture might be slightly out of date, for example, or it's hard to actually find the entrance, for example. If it's up a set of stairs or around a corner through the fire exit, it might be difficult to find. And so these first level experiences is what step one is trying to highlight, that how could that be a better experience for your clients? Because just like going to see the doctor, there is a little bit of anxiety around seeing your professional. We want to remove that friction from the relationship and ensure that happens. And so we can do exactly the same thing of that front end experience with the client. With a digital exposure, we need to just retrace the same steps on what we would like the world to look like from a client perspective.
And don't just take it for granted. Really put yourself under pressure to go and test this. I remember doing some strategy work with an advisor once, and what was coming out through that strategy so strong was how they wanted people to feel safe, how they wanted people to feel warm and comfortable when they were in their office. And I'd arrived at that office for the first time ever that morning. And I do this every time I go to an advisor's office, is I start the emotional process and the psychological process of finding a park. How did that make me feel walking into the office and all that type of thing? And what this firm was espousing they wanted to make people feel is no doubt how the individuals inside that building would make people feel. But I took the advisor out the front and I said to him, right, we're going to walk in here together, but you need to feel like a client and tell me what you see. And so I walked him up the stairs through the door into his office, into the reception area. How do you feel? Well, I feel like I'm in my office. Let's do it again. And I had to do it 3 times. And you know what? They could not identify what I had identified. And on the 3rd time, they said, well, maybe that could change or that could change. I said, no, you actually feel like you're in the waiting room of a dentist. It was sterile. It was clean and everything, right? But it was sterile. And I said, you just said to me, you want me to feel warm and safe and comfortable. I haven't felt that yet. I feel like I'm at the dentist. I feel like I'm going for a root canal. And so it was a really interesting perspective. And he actually said to me, now I see it. And I'd never seen it and I'd never felt it. And it almost even smelled sterile, right? Like it was Glen 20 or something like that. I know COVID had hit, but it was Glen 20 or something. But that perspective was very interesting for them. And so I use that story, Dean, to say they've got to challenge yourself. Like, don't just walk in and go, oh, it's okay. Actually really go through that process, or even get others to go through it and give you feedback and listen to it, because it does make a massive, massive difference.
Yeah. And interestingly, a couple of examples that come to mind in our journey is that years ago, when we had an office in Absolute, we actually were trying to find a new office space, and we found a very nice building and space for the staff to work from. But what we realized is that it was in quite a high security building. And so the client experience upon arrival had a lot of friction. They needed to go to a counter, identify who they were, sign in, and then get a pass, and then go through those security gates in order to get up to the floor. And so we actually decided that was too much friction. Now we understand why that building might be security enabled for other floors, because it's mostly working building as opposed to a visitor building. And so that didn't work for us as a result. So we didn't select that for the security reasons. The one, coincidentally, that we ended up with, unfortunately, had a different type of friction upon arrival, and that was the friction of an iPad. So instead of arriving with a human, you arrived with an iPad, and you filled out the iPad with your details, which pinged our office a message to come and get you. in theory, that could be good, but you've got to think about it through the lens of a client. Now we're putting another element of friction that they have to do all of this in order to get through the door or get you to come and see you. And we ended up at what would be the oldest WeWork concept, which was ServCore. It's an old brand, I suppose. But the one thing that it does really well is it always has staffed reception. And so they managed to sort out the piece of the process that we were avoiding or wanting to avoid, which was actually making sure that when our clients were able to arrive at the floor in the building, that there was a human there that smiled and said, yes, you do have a meeting with Dean, come and sit here, or we will take you into the meeting room. Now, so the point of that story is to think about the friction, even for getting your clients to the door, but then secondly, the friction around the digital versus face-to-face as well to get that version into the building.
And I think you're hitting on another good point there that I identified at this doctor's yesterday. And that was the final element to this. If there is a human involved, make sure that human actually really wants to be there. And I could tell that the people working in this doctor's surgery loved working there, loved engaging with people, and just absolutely adored giving people that right experience. And I think that comes back, in past episodes that we talked about leadership and stuff, that comes back to the people who are actually in charge of making that environment the place to be. They're not only thinking about their end user, but they're thinking about their staff who have to sit in it every single day and the benefits and things that they get so that they give the best experience when a client shows up.
Yeah. And the best experience, I have always had this old joke about the frustration some of the professionals like a power planner feels when they have two roles, which is doing power planning, which is a complicated, intelligent job. And then they also get sucked into the other role, which is making the copies or answering the doorbell and doing all of those other things. So it's really important to work out the person that is at the front wants to be there, because if you're relying on some of your other staff but haven't built the leadership around that or the culture around it, they can also get frustrated and they take that frustration out on the experience upon arrival. So if you had a power planner that was deep into a spreadsheet, the doorbell rings and they have to not only welcome the client, so change from analytical to relationship, welcome the client in, then they have to go and maybe get the meeting room ready. If they're not ready for that or not thinking about that, that can lead to a frustration, which impacts the experience that their clients are having overall.
And just chatting through this, Dean, I'm going to throw a challenge out to the listeners. If you think you have got a magnificent client experience, the way the office is set up, the way it feels, the way it functions, drop us a line, put the comment on this chat, or, DM one of us. And Dean and I will actually come and do an UncommonCents episode from your reception. And we'll show people
what it really feels like. Well done, Craig. So preferably in Adelaide or New South Wales, but we'll see. Yeah. We will fly anywhere around the world to do that.
Up at the Gemini and a road trip together.
Excellent. Craig, the other thing, just following this example, is we've got lots of people that work from home. So they've built remote businesses. And there's lots of advisors, I would assume still today, that make house calls. I'm using the terminology house calls in the doctor sense to bring it back there as well. If we ask ourselves, why did advisors make house calls? Is it actually led to that comfort level of talking about intimate things whilst at home? And I wanted to bring this up because it's relevant for those advisors that do make house calls, but also the other reason as to why it's great to do video meetings with clients, because they're very likely to be in an environment where they actually feel really comfortable. So you can talk to your clients whilst they're in their lounge room, kitchen, or personal study, for example, and all of those places, they have a degree of comfort. So they're actually more relaxed in attending a meeting with you because they're at home. And that's one of the reasons why advisors used to drive around, or insurance salesmen 20 years ago used to drive around, was that they met the clients in their environment and therefore could connect with them quicker, frankly, but also that the client was comfortable in that environment as well.
It did help. There's no doubt that it allowed the client to be free and talk about stuff. So you wonder then, which little bits of that can you take and put in a meeting room?
Probably the doilies to start with. We're going back in time, but there are probably some things to make your office feel a little bit more homely. And
Yes.
Craig and I are not the interior decorators to do that, but there are people that can help you. But I would put it into the theme of making it a little bit more homely is definitely going to make that experience a little bit calmer when clients are coming through the door.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this on episodes many, many moons ago. But think about the smell. Like when you walk into a hotel, what's the first thing you know?
Smell. Well, I'm not saying that this is my favorite hotel, but when I run past Crown and Barangaroo, the smell of the entire hotel actually is outside of Crown. So if you run or walk past Crown in Sydney, there's a different smell out the front of Crown than there is for the rest of Barangaroo.
Yeah.
And so companies do put effort into having a scent for their office.
Well, they do, and they should, because it's this sense of, oh, I've arrived at Absolute Wealth Advisors. You know, I'm here. It's familiarity every time you go there. It's the first sense that normally hits, even sometimes beyond, you know, what you can see, because you're used to see that smell gives you that familiarity and sense of home. And you're the Crown's one of those that have absolutely nailed the scent because you get it regardless of which one of the hotels you get.
It's exactly the same globally. So if we just take a step back, the reason why we're talking about it today is not to sell aftershave at all, but just focusing on one element of your entire client experience, which is trying to ask all of us to reflect on that journey. And so whether you're digital or face-to-face, there's a company kind of experience. So the things that they're experiencing about you and your brand before they've made contact. And so I have the examples of, obviously, that is the website, it's the emails that you may send, or it's the phone calls that you may have with a prospect before they arrive at a meeting. And that can be a digital or physical meeting. And then we're trying to map out what it's like across that experience. And so taking the time as the business owner and advisor to walk into your office with a fresh set of eyes, and it may take you a couple of goes, as Craig said, to identify what it's actually like from a client experience.
100%, mate. So needs to look good, needs to feel good, needs to smell good, and then everything around it. Just keep thinking about it, keep challenging yourself, try and make it better.
Yep, absolutely. And be the leader. So I think that if you can imagine when you walk your client into a meeting room, for example, and there's 7 seats, you're allowed to tell the client where to sit. It's something that I find really awkward when you walk into meeting rooms and you may have stepped through the door first because the professional may have let you go through first, for example, but then you just don't know where to sit. And so I think there's an element of all of these steps in the process. Don't leave them to chance, because the moment the client chooses a seat, as my one example, is that you've lost the opportunity. And now it's awkward because if you want the client to move because the screen is over there, you should have told them where to sit, not made them guess. And so all of these elements as you go to reflect is that you can do all of these things on purpose. You can choose what magazines. You don't have to just get the free ones. You can choose the scent. You can choose how you set up the space and based on what you want to achieve.
Good points, Dean. I'm going to wrap this up with my pet hate. And if this happens in your office, I'm sorry, I don't care. You need to stop it. Do not give clients their tea, their coffee, their water, their Coke, their beer, whatever it is that is on your menu list. Do not give them that drink while they're sitting in reception waiting for you. It's horrible because when you have to move to the meeting room, I need to pick up my stuff. I need to try and get my tea or coffee or drink and balance it into the meeting room. And it's totally awkward and I hate it. So if you're doing it, stop it.
How do we solve it, Craig? Just put their drinks in the meeting room.
Just bring it in the meeting room once everyone's sat down.
There you go. So don't take that one as action. And if you do it, let Craig Kamanis know. He'll come to your office for the complimentary beer. So that's great.
That's nice.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was Uncommon Sense live, the face with Dean Holmes and Craig Kamanis. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
Bye, everyone.